This show is part of OnePlace, a daily network of focused briefings across the stories people follow most.
Welcome to our daily roundup. We have a packed episode today covering major political shifts, federal funding disputes, and high-stakes aviation incidents. Let's get right into the headlines you need to know.
The Attorney General claims massive evidence of election rigging.
Senator Bill Cassidy loses his primary in Louisiana.
Senate Republicans lose funding for a White House ballroom.
A senator argues Kash Patel has weaponized the FBI.
Louisiana voters face confusion after a major primary loss.
Fighter jet crews eject safely after a mid-air collision.
Trump addresses a Christian gathering on the National Mall.
Pete Buttigieg criticizes Sean Duffy's new reality show.
First, the election claims. Acting U.S. Attorney General Todd Blanche recently made headlines during an appearance on Fox News, where he asserted that there is a ton of evidence suggesting the 2020 presidential election was rigged against Donald Trump. Despite these bold claims, Blanche did not provide any specific proof or documentation to support his statements during the interview with Maria Bartiromo. He mentioned that multiple investigations are currently underway in key areas like Arizona and Fulton County, Georgia. However, when pressed on why this supposed evidence hasn't been released to the public after all these years, Blanche struggled to provide a clear explanation. He suggested that the Democratic Party is skilled at hiding misconduct, which has made the process of uncovering the truth much more difficult for his team and the Department of Justice investigators involved.
The interview took an interesting turn when Blanche addressed the public's frustration over the lack of arrests or definitive disclosures. He admitted that he cannot promise a definitive answer on whether the election was stolen, noting that such a guarantee wouldn't be fair to the American people. This cautious tone contrasts sharply with his earlier claims of having massive amounts of evidence. Blanche emphasized that the work requires old-fashioned law enforcement and police work, which takes time to execute properly. He assured viewers that if charges are filed or a report is finalized, the results will eventually be shared. For now, the Department of Justice remains focused on verifying voter eligibility and ensuring that only one vote was cast per person in the contested states, though the timeline for any final conclusion remains entirely uncertain.
Next, the Louisiana primary. In a significant political shift, Republican Senator Bill Cassidy lost his primary race in Louisiana, coming in a distant third place. This loss is being viewed as a clear demonstration of Donald Trump's enduring influence over the GOP, particularly in low-turnout primary elections. Cassidy was one of the few Republicans who voted to convict Trump during his second impeachment trial following the January 6th Capitol riot. In his concession speech, Cassidy remarked that the nation is about more than just one individual, a statement clearly aimed at the former president. Trump had actively campaigned against Cassidy, endorsing challengers to ensure the senator's defeat. This outcome serves as a warning to other Republicans who have broken ranks with Trump, showing that the base remains highly motivated to follow the former president's lead when it comes to internal party challenges.
Beyond the personal political drama, the Louisiana primary also highlighted the impact of changing election rules and redistricting. The race was notably messy because the U.S. Supreme Court recently stripped certain civil rights-era protections for black voters, allowing the state government to redraw congressional maps. These changes were designed to boost Republican odds, and the state even canceled some House primaries to allow enough time for the new maps to be implemented. This structural shift, combined with Trump's endorsement power, created an environment where an incumbent like Cassidy struggled to find a path to victory. The results suggest that the rules of the game are being rewritten in ways that favor the most loyal segments of the party, making it increasingly difficult for moderate or dissenting voices to survive a primary challenge in deep red states.
Now to the ballroom. A major spending battle in the Senate has resulted in a setback for President Trump's plans to build a new ballroom at the White House. A U.S. official recently struck down a provision that would have used taxpayer funds for security upgrades related to the project. Senate parliamentarian Elizabeth McDonough ruled that the funding was out of order because it didn't comply with the Byrd Rule, which prevents non-budgetary items from being included in certain spending packages. Democrats had argued fiercely against the provision, claiming that taxpayers should not be responsible for a $400 million ballroom project, while Republicans argued the funds were necessary for Secret Service upgrades following a security incident at a previous gala. The parliamentarian ultimately agreed with the Democratic opposition, dealing a blow to the administration's efforts to fast-track the construction using federal money.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer celebrated the ruling, stating that Americans do not want or need a ballroom and certainly shouldn't be forced to pay for one. He accused Republicans of trying to sneak the funding into a broader Department of Homeland Security package. Despite this defeat, Republican leaders have indicated they plan to go back to the drawing board to find another way to secure the funding. They maintain that the security of the president and the White House grounds is a nonpartisan issue that requires immediate investment. However, Democrats remain vigilant, with Senator Jeff Merkley promising to challenge any future attempts to revive the ballroom funding. The clash highlights the deep divide in Congress over how discretionary funds are used for projects that critics view as vanity projects rather than essential government infrastructure.
Next, the FBI controversy. Senator Chris Van Hollen has launched a scathing critique of FBI Director Kash Patel, arguing that he needs to be removed from his position immediately. During an appearance on NBC's Meet the Press, Van Hollen claimed that Patel has completely weaponized the FBI for political purposes. He specifically pointed to Patel's actions against agents who investigated the January 6th rioters and those involved in the investigation of classified materials at Mar-a-Lago. Van Hollen argued that these agents were simply following orders and that firing them, especially those in the counter-espionage unit focused on Iran, has compromised national security. The senator expressed deep concern that the FBI cannot function effectively under Patel's leadership, citing a pattern of behavior that he believes prioritizes political loyalty over the impartial administration of justice and the protection of the American public.
The tension between Van Hollen and Patel also stems from reports regarding Patel's personal conduct, including allegations of excessive drinking. During a recent Senate hearing, the two clashed over these reports, leading Van Hollen to challenge Patel to take an alcohol use disorder test. While Patel has denied the allegations and filed a massive defamation lawsuit against the publication that first reported them, Van Hollen remains skeptical. He noted that while Patel's personal life is his own business, any behavior that results in him being incapacitated or compromises the FBI's mission is a matter of public concern. Patel has reportedly agreed under oath to take the test, but Van Hollen expressed doubt about whether he will actually follow through. This ongoing feud underscores the intense scrutiny facing the FBI leadership as they navigate a highly polarized political landscape.
Moving to Louisiana again. The recent primary in Louisiana has left many voters confused and the political landscape in a state of flux. The headline story is the defeat of Senator Bill Cassidy, who lost his seat after voting to convict Donald Trump in 2021. Trump's influence was palpable, as he used social media to label Cassidy a disloyal disaster and a sleazebag. This rhetoric clearly resonated with the Republican base, leading to Cassidy's third-place finish. The race is now heading toward a runoff between two Trump-aligned candidates, Julia Letlow and John Fleming. This upcoming contest is expected to be a competition of who can align themselves most closely with the former president's agenda. The shift away from Cassidy marks a significant moment for Louisiana politics, signaling a complete embrace of the Trump wing of the party and a rejection of more traditional conservative figures.
Adding to the drama was the confusion caused by the governor's decision to reschedule several U.S. House races. This move, combined with the redrawing of congressional maps, created a chaotic environment for voters on Election Day. The changes were part of a broader effort to adjust the state's political boundaries following recent court rulings. Analysts point out that this isn't just happening in Louisiana. Trump has been endorsing challengers to Republican state senators in other states like Indiana, who opposed his preferred redistricting plans. The success of these endorsements suggests a coordinated effort to reshape the party from the ground up. As Louisiana prepares for the runoff, the focus will remain on how these structural changes and Trump's personal grievances continue to dictate the future of the Republican Party in the South and beyond.
Now, the air show. A dramatic mid-air collision occurred during the Gunfighter Skies Air Show in Idaho, involving two U.S. Navy EA-18G Growler fighter jets. Fortunately, all four crew members were able to eject safely and are currently reported to be in stable condition. The incident happened during an aerial demonstration just a few miles from Mountain Home Air Force Base. Following the crash, a fire erupted on the ground, and the base was briefly placed on lockdown while emergency teams responded. The remainder of the air show was immediately canceled to allow for a full investigation into the cause of the collision. These specialized electronic attack aircraft are valued at approximately $67 million each, making the financial loss significant. though officials are primarily relieved that no lives were lost in the high-speed accident during the public event.
The Navy confirmed that the crews involved were assigned to an electronic attack squadron based in Washington state. Medical personnel are currently monitoring the aircrew to ensure there are no lingering injuries from the ejection process, which can be physically taxing. Organizers of the air show expressed their gratitude for the patience and compassion shown by the guests during the emergency response. This particular air show has a somber history, as the last time it was held in 2018, a glider pilot tragically died in an accident. The quick and successful ejection of the Navy crews this time prevented a similar tragedy. As the investigation continues, military officials will be looking at flight data and witness accounts to determine exactly how the two sophisticated jets came into contact during their routine performance.
Next, the prayer gathering. On Sunday, a large crowd gathered on the National Mall for a conservative prayer event titled Rededicate 250, intended to commemorate America's upcoming 250th birthday. The event featured worship songs, prayers from various religious leaders, and speeches from prominent members of the Trump administration. While Donald Trump did not attend in person, he provided a video message where he read from the Bible, specifically a passage from 2 Chronicles regarding God's response to King Solomon. Other high-profile figures like Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Secretary of State Marco Rubio also delivered video messages. House Speaker Mike Johnson led the attendees in prayer, emphasizing the belief that American rights are derived from a creator rather than the government. The gathering was organized by Freedom 250, a group working with the White House to plan national celebrations for this summer.
The event has faced significant criticism from groups concerned about the separation of church and state. Critics argue that the gathering promoted Christian nationalism, noting that 18 of the 19 scheduled faith leaders were Christian, mostly from evangelical backgrounds. The Interfaith Alliance even projected messages supporting religious freedom onto the National Gallery of Art in protest, calling the rally an attempt to turn the U.S. into an authoritarian theocracy. Despite these concerns, supporters viewed the event as a necessary rededication of the nation to its religious roots. The presence of only one non-Christian leader, a rabbi who serves on Trump's Religious Liberty Commission, further fueled the debate over the inclusivity of the event. As the country approaches its milestone anniversary, these types of gatherings are likely to continue sparking intense discussions about the role of faith in American public life.
Finally, the Buttigieg critique. Former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg has publicly criticized his successor Sean Duffy over the launch of a new reality show called The Great American Road Trip. Duffy, a former MTV star, is documenting a 7-month journey across the country with his family, which Buttigieg described as an embarrassment to the administration. Buttigieg argued that it is tone-deaf for a high-ranking official to promote a road trip that fits any budget at a time when many Americans are struggling with high gas and diesel prices. He pointed out that the current economic climate, influenced by international conflicts and previous administration policies, has made such travel unaffordable for many families. Buttigieg contrasted Duffy's journey with his own taxpayer-funded trip to Afghanistan during his military service, suggesting that Duffy's project lacks the seriousness required for someone in his position of public trust.
The controversy also involves the funding of the show, which is sponsored by companies that are regulated by the Department of Transportation. Buttigieg labeled this arrangement as nakedly unfair and a clear example of pay-to-play politics in Washington. While Duffy claims that no taxpayer money is being used and that he is not receiving a salary for the production, critics remain concerned about the potential for conflicts of interest. Furthermore, Buttigieg highlighted that the FAA has recently cut its hiring targets for air traffic controllers, despite ongoing staffing shortages, suggesting that the department's priorities are misplaced. The public spat between the former and current secretaries underscores a deeper disagreement over the role of government officials and whether their personal branding efforts should be allowed to intersect with their official duties, especially when the public is facing significant financial pressure.
That wraps up our briefing for today. Thank you for joining us for this daily roundup of the most important stories. Be sure to follow the show for your next update tomorrow morning.